There was an official mid-season patch earlier this week that should last us about 2 more weeks until Season 2 begins on December 6th. This is what it quickly looks like. D.Va, Zarya, Genji, Junkrat, Sombra, Kiriko nerfs, which directly and indirectly changes other heroes' viabilities. So, this is an updated hero tier list based on these changes and a couple of bugs, which we'll get to in a bit, for the average player, based on my opinion. D.Va just received a tiny nerf this patch, but it doesn't really affect her at all. She was already S tier earlier in Season 1, but it just so happened Zarya was S+ tier. With the recent Zarya nerfs and Winston and sometimes Roadhog emerging as the premier tank, as we also saw in the Overwatch League, D.Va plays quite well in those matchups and is thus A tier. Listen, unless your name is Get Quaked on or Zebra, or you're a seasoned Doomfist parkour enjoyer, you are going to have an unbelievably hard time to even get average value on this hero. His skill floor and skill ceiling are so high, and there's just far easier tank options that quite frankly do more than Doomfist if you were similarly skilled. So for that reason, he's F tier until he gets his buffs in Season 2. Unfortunately, Junker Queen is still in a rough spot to play, especially with Kiriko being meta. If you manage to land a Gracie knife into someone and try pulling them in for a Carnage Axe swing, you know, ding, Kiriko Suzu's them. If you manage to get a huge ult off, ding, Kiriko Suzu's that as well. Junker Queen survivability is decent though for the average player against an average Kiriko, so I'm going to put her in D tier for now, but I expect her to be much better after her buffs in Season 2. Every day I hear complaints that Orisa is unkillable, and honestly these claims are quite justified. She also matches up very well with the 2 meta tanks with Winston and Roadhog, and is honestly a great choice against them. You can spear and spin away the Winston engages, and Roadhog does nothing to you with his shotgun pellet damage against all that Orisa armor, and then the spear Orisa is an easy stop to his take a breather self-healing, so all in all, A tier for the average player. Rein is a C tier hero who is playable if the right conditions are met, with the conditions being speed and a map that doesn't have too much high ground. Luckily, both Lucio and Kiriko are strong meta supports and enables Rein to quickly engage and swing, especially on brawly maps like most control and push maps. Roadhog is suddenly S tier. How did that happen? How did a hero who was considered bad early in Season 1 come out on top? Well, a couple of reasons. One, Zarya was meta early on and could just save a bubble in this matchup, right? And save anyone who got hooked, and your, fat hitbox made it easy for her to just farm grabs off you. The second reason is Kiriko. Kiriko on your team can now Suzu and cleanse CC and abilities that destroy you like Sleep Dart and Anti-Nade. Kitsune Rush plus Whole Hog is also a crazy good combo, especially because Roadhog can now stop channeling his ultimate, right? You can re-hook people while ulting and then keep running with that movement speed and close the gap more and continue hogging along. The third reason is that Winston is strong right now, right? And Hog is naturally a good matchup for him, so S tier. Sigma is still really strong on long open sightline maps because of his poking style nature, such as Circuit Royale and Junkertown. His barrier can be really annoying to break if he manages it well with his kinetic suck. Top that off with great damage output and easy one-shot combos with the buffed rock plus primary fire, and you've got yourself a versatile hero in B tier. Winston was S tier in the Overwatch 2 beta and received tiny nerfs early this season, but was actually still a great choice in A tier, falling just slightly behind D.Va and Zarya, of course. But now that those two are nerfed, Kiriko is also great in the meta, and then Winston allows her to actually dive and follow you into the back lines as needed, and naturally, Winston is now back up in S tier. Wrecking Ball is in a tough spot now that Roadhog is a popular choice, as Roadhog can actually just babysit in the back lines and then hook the ball out of any engages. Ball is also an inherently high skill floor and high skill ceiling hero, making him a weak choice unless you're really comfortable with his movement and grapple mechanics. I don't think Ball is actually weak as a hero, it's just his place in the meta is tough because Lucio and Kiriko have high survivability, Sojourn can just slide out, Reaper can just blast him, like it's rough out there for Ball mains, so F tier for now in this tier list. Believe it or not, these Zarya nerfs are actually quite healthy and bring her down to B tier, making it still good and playable. The bubble duration from 2.5 seconds to 2 seconds each is actually how it was in Overwatch 1, and it kind of raises the skill floor a little bit and isn't as noob friendly. It was so easy for bad Zarya players to get 100 energy with back-to-back 2.5 second bubbles, right? That's a giant 5-second window of absorbing damage, and it was just really long. And now that it's tuned down to 4 seconds, because quick maths, back-to-back 2-second bubbles, 2 plus 2, it means bad players won't be able to get away with it as easily, right? And then skilled Zaryas actually won't see too much change because their bubble management was probably good to begin with, so B tier. I still think Ashe is a strong choice because the DPS reload passive allows her to snowball and reposition, and the dynamites are really free right now with less shield, and Bob is a great ultimate. She's a great option if you're bad at Sojourn, and it seemed like she was the fallback comfort pick of some Overwatch League players early on in the Sojourn meta. So honestly, if you can't play Sojourn, you can actually still play Ashe, as she is A tier. Quite strong. Listen, Bastion is a DPS machine, and he isn't weak per se, because clearly he is the highest DPS when he's in that turret form. But that's actually the issue, right? It's a strong power spike when transformed, and then he suddenly becomes mediocre when it's over. Then he has to wait for that cooldown, and that's exactly how teams should play into that weakness. For example, if you're a Winston and you hear the Bastion transform, just wait. Once it's over, boom, jump him, and his giant hitbox makes him an easy picking. Top that off with a terrible artillery ultimate that's so easy to dodge, and you've got yourself a hero that's in D tier. And the only reason he's not in F tier for the average player is because he has a low skill floor, and some players just don't have patience to wait out his transformation. He's so easy to counter. I think I did Cassidy a disservice in the last tier list by placing him in C tier, because I actually think he deserves to be upgraded to the B tier the more and more I see him. I have to remind myself this is a tier list catered to the average player, and the magnetic grenade is an unbelievably easy ability to get instant value. It does 131 freaking damage, man. That's a lot. He's a comfort pick and excels in short to medium ranges, and with the meta being sped up and the enemies have to, get in close to you, and rather than poking from afar, it actually makes Cassidy a relatively good choice. High Noon is also an incredibly good ultimate now with the 40% damage reduction while in it. He isn't just a sitting duck that can just die now, right? And it makes it a great zoning tool and is quite strong in stopping enemy Kiriko ultimates as long as you're ready for it. Echo can absolutely dominate and carry games, and it's a shame she's not a popular pick for the average player because she's considered a high skill ceiling and difficult hero to master, since you also have to learn her effective range, her beam range, the aerial flying movement mechanics, and how to play all the heroes in the game technically, since anyone can be duplicated. Despite that, there's no better time to start now. Play Echo, as she's A tier. Man, everyone's just writing Genji nerf, skull emoji, Genji useless now, skull emoji, Genji this, Genji that, but listen guys, he's actually not unplayable. In fact, he's still good in B tier. Some of you guys don't remember old iterations of Genji in Overwatch 1 who had this exact 27 damage per shuriken, except his secondary fire spread at that time was actually way wider back then. They were really spread out, and this, right now, this version of Genji is still a better version of that. Plus, he has that DPS passive, which is incredibly good with him, with the faster reload and move speed on an elim, which just straight up didn't exist back then, right? There's also less CC in the game now, less shields, the meta's still fast-paced with Winston, Die plus Kiriko, Lucio. Why would he be weak with just a small tweak to his damage? It doesn't really affect too many of his breakpoints. Play him if you want, he's B tier. Hanzo and snipers in general will always depend on the player. If you're good at the hero, you'll always find success, of course, right? That being said, I actually think Hanzo is good right now in B tier because his Dragon Strike ultimate is an extremely strong counter to all the Kiriko Kitsune Rush all-ins. You should be able to build it with a similar tempo to the enemy Kiriko, and you kind of just hold on to it to counter and trade ult for ult, with the advantage to the Hanzo's team because Kitsune Rush is an unbelievably strong team fight winning ultimate. I rated Junkrat D tier early in season 1 due to the tough tank matchups like Zarya getting free energy, and now that Winston is in though, Rat is actually a pretty strong counter pick with sneaky trap placement and great knockback boopage with his mind to kind of push him back from his engages. Also want to say some great Junkrat players have now adjusted to the 5v5 pacing and have learned to stop staying in that one spot and spamming like the enemy has double shield. They're actually learning and evolving how to be sneaky and be an assassinating flank rat, which I honestly think is the best playstyle for him right now, moving him all the way up to B tier and is good now. Mei is honestly playable in C tier, and underrated actually for the most part. Though she's not popular at the high ranks, I think the average player will easily find success with her with the low skill floor and easy primary fire slow beam that deals a ton of buff DPS when compared to her Overwatch 1 numbers. And a single elimination, right, with the DPS passive will give her enough move speed to continue snowballing her advantage, no pun intended. Okay, if you skip to the end of the list and saw Pharah up in the A tier, now you're scrolling back right now to see my reason why I put her here. Hey, how you doing? Listen up, okay? Pharah is bugged right now. And if this patch lasts until the end of the season, you have about 2 weeks to take advantage of a strong version of Pharah, and here's why. Normally, Pharah's Rocket Barrage ult is supposed to cost 2100 points. meaning you need to deal 2100 damage to get it, because that's how ultimate charge works in this game. However, for some reason, it only costs 1600 points right now, 500 cheaper. There's no documentation in the patch notes, there's no acknowledgement, no nothing. It's just 25% off. It's a Black Friday sale. Now think about this. You also gain 300 ultimate points per minute passively, meaning if you do the math, you only need to get about 1300 points to get your ult in 1 minute, which is only hitting about 10 rockets. That's it. Once you account for like splash damage, a couple of direct hits, and maybe a mercy pocketing and damage boosting you, you can easily farm barrages in a minute or less non-stop, making her extremely lethal right now, so play her while it lasts. Reaper absolutely decimates both Winston and Roadhog, who are the two S tier tanks, and synergizes very well with Kiriko and Lucio since they speed him up to close the gaps in all matchups. He has reliable damage and benefits greatly from the DPS passive movement speed upon elimination, and is honestly just one of the best heroes in S tier. Is there anything I really need to say about Sojourn that the community hasn't said yet? Right? This hero can do it all. Insane mobility, great poke, instant one-shot rail, AoE slow zoning field, an insane ultimate. S tier. I originally had Soldier in C tier early in the beta, but I found he was a really common comfort pick for many, and for a tier list that's for the average player, this hero is the poster boy of a traditional FPS character with, decent damage output, potential burst damage with Helix, self-healing, and sprint. If you suck at Sojourn and Ashe, just play Soldier, as he's B tier. Sombra has received 3 hefty nerfs and a bug fix, which is pretty much a nerf, which stops the insanely powerful nano EMP combo, which did a ridiculous 60% of an enemy's max HP. She's still permanently invisible right now with her stealth and can annoy enemy backlines who aren't prepared for her, but for those reasons, this did bring her down from S tier to C tier. I was actually debating whether to put Symmetra in F tier or not, but when you think about the meta tank in Winston, sure, Winston could win in a strict 1v1 against Symmetra, but if you play out of his initial dive, it's a free charged level 3 beam almost instantly, which can be deadly against enemies who are trying to follow up with Monkey. So by definition, she's D tier, right? Being niche, but playable if the situation is right. Torb is a hero that just plays itself, especially for the average ranks. Torb turret is incredibly annoying to deal with, and his alternate shotgun fire is decent when dealing with dive. He's B tier all the way. Well, I would normally reserve Tracer as A tier for high level players only who can capitalize on her incredibly high skill ceiling, but we have to consider her state this patch, and guess what? She's bugged. Normally, fall off damage begins at 13 meters away from a target, and it scales her damage per bullet down until she's 20 meters away, where it then should be capped and only deal about 1.5 damage per bullet instead of 5 damage per bullet. However, this entire fall-off mechanic is bugged right now. Watch, as there is absolutely no fall-off damage under 20 meters of distance, and she's honestly dealing way too much damage here. But then as soon as you pass her 20 meter max range, it sharply drops off rather than it was supposed to be like a scale, right? And it's been acknowledged by Aaron Keller now as a bug and will actually last until Season 2, so for now, I'm going to put her in S tier in this current state. Widow is completely skill dependent, and if you can click heads, you will always generate value for your team by clearing sight lines and forcing uncomfortable positioning by the enemy if they have to respect your shot. If you're average on Widowmaker, which is again what this tier list is geared for, you'll just be right in the middle of the pack at B tier. Ana will always be a comfort pick for many, but may struggle to survive against good Winstons and fast enemy Lucio Kiriko dive. However, this is not the Overwatch League, and you know Roadhog will also be picked a ton in the metal ranks. Even though Kiriko can cleanse CC, she can't cleanse both your sleep and anti-nade, so as long as you hit one, you will continue to terrorize Roadhog, just not as often, so for that I'm going to put her in B tier for now. Still good. High survivability is incredibly valued for supports right now, and Baptiste has that covered with both the exo boots to jump up and reposition on high ground, the instant heal on regen burst, and immortality field. His DPS output is one of the highest among supports and matches well into Winston since he can actually pressure and burst down his bubble. He also matches well into Roadhog by staying at range while constantly poking down his giant hitbox, allowing you to farm fast ults. Seriously, he's incredibly strong and versatile right now in the A tier. Rig has fallen off a bit, and the only comp I can think she excels in right now is with Junker Queen, based on what we saw in both the Overwatch League and the second Overwatch 2 beta. But without Junker Queen in the meta due to her nerfs to Commanding Shout, what purpose does Brig serve now when Kiriko and other supports just do more, right? She's not inherently bad as a hero, but Brig is a product of a poor meta for her as she isn't the tanky survivable support she once was. In fact, she's arguably quite squishy now, and you have to use your shield bash a lot to get out since it doesn't stun anymore. So I'm going to put her in D tier for now. The average player may not find Kiriko as OP because her kunais are incredibly hard to reliably hit. That's the high skill ceiling for this hero. But it turns out you can actually still win your games by heal botting, maybe not by that strict definition, but consistently putting out good reliable heals with good tracking, right? Gotta make sure your healing Ofudas are aimed quite well, and then it'll auto aim for you or auto lock on. But if you do that, you will build really fast Kitsune rushes and you can just win off that. When you boil it down, her ultimate gives 3x cooldown reduction. 3 times, man. 50% movement speed, which by the way, movement speed is capped at 75% in this game, so you're already like 2/3 of the way there, and if you pair it with Lucio passively, like the speed aura, you're at max move speed. And then obviously, Kitsune Rush also gives incredible attack speed. This ultimate is instantaneous value. She's got great survivability as well with her swift step to get out, and Protection Suzu isn't a hard ability to land, you just ding, throw it on the ground. So putting it all together, you've got yourself a premium S tier meta hero, even if you suck at kunai headshots. Speed is key, and survivability is key in Season 1 of Overwatch 2. Lucio is slippery, hard to kill, and the speed boost enables a quick all-in coordinated fight. Don't sleep on the amped up healing aura as well, which can grant a ton of ult charge and top off teammates really quickly. Lucio also has versatile playstyles because he can go assassination style and then quickly punish out of position enemy backlines or isolated DPSs, making him a menace in the S tier. Mercy is a safe and playable option in C tier due to her low skill floor for the average player. The other supports on the Overwatch roster can play make much better than her, so at times Mercy can feel helpless as she's at the mercy of her own team. But she does have high survivability with her improved movement mechanics, along with damage boosting and enabling the right damage heroes. And luckily, all of the Mercy's strong DPS pairs are good right now. So you can totally play her with any combination of Ashe, Echo, Pharah, and Sojourn. Again, guess what? All 4 are A tier or higher in my opinion, so fly high, Mercy mans, fly high. I think Moira is lower tiered at the higher ranks, but this hero has a low skill floor, incredibly easy to pick up, and gets insanely good value for the average player. She's also got great survivability with that fade and the self-healing on Biotic Grasp when you try to 1v1 people, so you've got yourself a good hero in B tier for most players. Zen is still playable, by definition, in C tier. As good as the snap kick is, Winston's diving you, Tracer's bugged right now, and of course keeping her range and probably shredding you. Kiriko and Lucio are really slippery and hard to hit. This all makes it really hard to survive as Zen. I think Discord and Harmony Orb are easy good value, along with a well-timed Transcendence, which keeps him from being as low as D tier, but again, based on the meta and for the reasons just listed, I think he's at C tier for now. Alright, that's my tier list for the next 2 weeks until the end of the season. Watch my second channel, the KarQ, as I do tier lists there all the time about random shit, and come to my stream at twitch.tv/KarQ for Twitch drops. I'll see you there.